Ask Reddit, what is the scariest thing that's happened to you? One day I was walking down the road to see my mother. A Sliver Civic pulled up next to me. I respond very poorly to strangers normally, but that day I made an exception, a mistake. I recognized the face. I remember seeing him from time to time, every other day or so. He lived a few blocks from me in an apartment complex. Seemed like a normal 40-something male. He seemed nice. He asked if I needed a ride. It was so hot. I hesitated at first but decided to enter the car. Everything seemed fine. He asked me what I did for a living. He said he worked on cars. He said he had seen me around the neighborhood. I said I had seen him. Everything was fine. I told him my stop was a few blocks up, then his face went blank. I knew something was off immediately. He passed the street I told him stop at, didn't even slow down. I asked him to stop. He kept going. His face cold and blank turned to me, his eyes ping-ponging back and forth between me and the road. He started spewing disturbing and fragmented sentences. He said I would never have to work again, that he would treat me like a king, that he would take care of me and I would never need to leave him. I told him to stop the car. He told me I just needed to be quiet and listen. I noticed that he carried a belt-clip foldable knife when I entered the car. He had one hand on the wheel, the other passing erratically between his inner thigh and the center armrest. I yelled again for him to stop the car. His hand lunged over and clutched the top of my pants, at the button. He tried to twist the button off. When it did not work, he tucked his head halfway down my pants. I grabbed the wheel. We were going maybe 25 or 30. I pulled hard to the right and the car pulled over the curb onto a steep incline hill past the sidewalk and slammed to a stop. He reached towards his knife, maybe his crotch, but I reacted. 2 hard hits stunned him. In a rage I tried to break his head through the side window. It only bounced. I jumped out of the car and just sprinted until I couldn't any longer. I couldn't process what had happened. My hand was bleeding. I was full of adrenaline. When I was 7, I think my mom and her ex-best friend took us to these people's house that had kids and we were all playing and stuff, and apparently my mom's ex-best friend pissed off the other kids. Dad, and he came home with a gun and pointed it to his head. My mom shoved the gun away and then he pointed it at her head and I was the only one that saw it. My sisters and his kids were still in the house because they told us to go inside, but I had to pick up the baby and I accidentally dropped the baby. I just stood there watching everything, scared to move, and eventually the cops showed up and then I got to get into the back of a cop's car and calm down, and the dude that threatened my mom and her ex-best friend went to jail for 5 or so years I think, and he's apparently a better person now. About 2 years ago, my friend called me to meet him and his friend at the beach. They were drinking. We had a good time and I talked to his friend for a while. We suddenly realized we can't see our friend and we panicked. We saw him in the water and he couldn't swim. I didn't think and just jumped in the water and tried to pull him out. He already blacked out in the water a couple of times for just a millisecond. He started to swim even deeper. Then I started blacking out because we were inhaling so much water at that time. Somehow I managed to get us both to some stairs just some meters away. At that point, he was blacked out and bystanders wouldn't call an ambulance. I helped him, then I passed out on the stairs. I woke up a couple of minutes later. My friend was now awake and up on his feet. He was so blacked out drunk. We walked for a little bit, then he threw up. He woke up the next day and didn't remember. His friend told him, if I wasn't there, shit would not end great. It was really scary. Mine is really stupid and I shouldn't have done this. I was about 17 years old and going out to meet a friend at about 11 p.m. I lied to my parents and told them I was going in a taxi, but I walked instead. It was about 20-minute walk. I was listening to music with headphones on. No one was around. The streets were empty. When I crossed the road, I looked left and right as you do and noticed a man walking in my direction. I got a little bit anxious, and when I turned a corner I thought I'd run a bit to be further away from them. I ran quite fast and was out of breath, so I stopped, and as soon as I stopped running, a man walked past me and I jumped out my skin. He carried on walking down the street and then I waited a moment and then I did too. At the end of the street, it was a corner where the man was stood still and had his phone to his ear. As I walked past him, he grabbed me from behind, flipped me round and threw me to the ground. My shoes went flying off, my headphones came flying out and I began to scream my head off. The guy was stood over the top of me, pulling at my clothes as I was kicking and screaming on the floor, and then he just got up and ran off. I ran to my friend's house and then I was safe. I checked my handbag, nothing was taken, to which confused me at the time. Like, why did that happen if he wasn't stealing from me?